What? 1914? Exposed? Hey everyone, Vern here. Welcome back to Fixing My Faith. Well, today we're going to talk about something that's been at the very core of Jehovah's Witness teachings for over 100 years. You probably heard it 1,000 times this year, 1914. Jesus is ruling in 1914. But did you ever stop to ask, where did this date come from? Well, the truth is it didn't come from Jesus, and it didn't come from the apostles. Well, it started with one man in the 1800s who thought he could predict the future by using numbers, symbols, and a whole lot of guesswork. And thanks to an incredible article by Miss Usato, who brought this all up, it's on ExJW, and we now have a clear look at how this doctrine was built and why it falls apart. So before we dive into the reading of the article together, let me quickly say, if you've ever been confused or guilted by the Watchtower's timelines, well then this video's for you. If you're just now waking up and want a solid, well-researched facts about 1914, well this video's for you. And if you're just now already on the outside and you need more evidence that you've made the right decisions, that your instincts were right, well then this video's for you. Well, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. I'm working to get 10,000 and your support has helped me get this, to get where I'm at. And if you can, watch the full video through. It helps the algorithms with YouTube to push these videos, and honestly, YouTube is my only source of income. I don't have an old age pension. I'm not that old yet. And I don't ask for donations. I just try to put good content out that helps people. But if you want to support the channel in a fun way, check out the Fixing My Faith. Well, here you go. We got these t-shirts, Fixing My Faith. These are really good quality ones. And we have these mugs. And there's hats. You know, if you like the ball cap, I wear that a lot. Live your life with love. So there's a lot of different things. It's fun, and it's things that you can use, and it really helps the channel. It helps us literally. So now let's jump into it. Take a look at how the Watchtower twisted prophecy math to create a doctrine that still holds people, or millions, it holds millions in fear, this doctrine. So before we get into this, I want to say, once you get all of this stuff out of your head and you start to feel normal, this is what it's like. Oh, sorry, I got into it a little too hard. Well, thanks for sticking around, and we're going to get over to our other screen here, and we're going to take a look at Miss Usato's article. Here we are. It's all, you can find this on ExJW. I'll put a link in the description below. And this is Russell's 1914 Gentile Times Breakfast Declaration, Fact or Fiction article. This cover is created by Miss Usato. This is a picture of Charles Taze Russell, supposedly in front of the Watchtower people, you know, at Bethel, announcing this. That's what's that picture's depicting. And this if Charles Taze, here's the outset. It says, if Charles Taze Russell truly strode into the Bethel dining room on October 2nd, 1914, declaring the Gentile times have ended and their kings have had their day, then history missed the memo. For nearly a decade, there was no mention of this dramatic moment, no articles, no letters, not even a passing reference. It's like someone claiming to have been the first on the moon, except they've only mentioned it years later in a footnote after the real witness can no longer dispute it. So did Russell say it? Or is this a carefully crafted myth introduced later to bluster a developing doctrine? And the following analysis written and researched by Larchwood. Now, for a lot of you out there, here's Larchwood. We're going to go there. Larchwood has done a lot in the community, helping expose the Watchtower in so many different ways. I plugged 1914 in Larchwood's site. It just a ton of stuff came up. So he's been on this 1914 thing for quite some time. And if you go to Larchwood's site, there's a lot of research on there about Jehovah's Witnesses and getting out of the cult. So thanks, Larchwood, for all your hard work. And Miss Usato, you guys putting this together. So she says a fellow friend. So you're a fellow friend of Miss Usato and a research advocate on Watchtower's teachings. So dives deep into the pivotal claim, unraveling the origins of the story every Jehovah's Witness has heard, but few have ever truly examined. So all the research has been through Watchtower's publications, except for one reference written by this Macmillan guy. He was a Jehovah's Witness. He wrote a book, Faith on the March, I guess. I didn't read it, but maybe some of you out there have read it. Now, the Gentile Times have ended. We all know what that means. We've had it beat into us. Well, here it is, the famous story that Charles Taze Russell declared the Gentile Times have ended on October 2nd, 1914, is not supported by any contemporary evidence. The quote wasn't attributed to Russell until 1922, 6 years after his death. Like, he died in 1916, October 31st, that was on Halloween, and 8 years later after the supposed event. Wow. So isn't that something, you know? Person dies and then you make stories up? Well, let's carry on. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of proof here. Watchtower publications from 1914 to 1922 make no mention of such an announcement. In 1975, the date of the alleged declaration was changed to October 1st, based on a 1957 book that was not published by the Watchtower. Must be that Macmillan's book. And the timing of the first published account in 1922 during Rutherford's campaign to promote the 1914 doctrine. So Rutherford, and maybe we should do a video on him, he was a lawyer. He was a litigator, and he actually ripped the Watchtower apart, and he usurped his position. Like, it's quite the story, Rutherford. And he wants to be called Judge Rutherford. Well, when they were doing their legal thing back then, he served as a judge for 3 days as training to be a lawyer. That's how they trained lawyers. You got to be a judge for 3 days. And that went to his head, and from then on, he wanted to be called Judge Rutherford. Never really became a judge. He never became a judge at all. He was just a lawyer. So, well, during Rutherford's campaign to promote the 1914 doctrine, and by the way, Rutherford, he became a witness when he became a lawyer for the Watchtower. Like, he was only a witness, I think, for 8 years prior to meeting Russell. He wasn't a witness. He wasn't a JW or Bible student or whatever they called him back then. But anyways, Rutherford, to me, is the most interesting character of the whole organization, and he is the one behind this. Well, he had a campaign to promote 1914 doctrine. He raises serious questions about his authenticity. If, like me, you were one of Jehovah's Witnesses for any length of time, you would undoubtedly have heard about the iconic moment when Charles Taze Russell, the founder of the Watchtower, announced that the Gentile Times have ended and the kings in their day on October 2nd. Like, we've all heard that, right? We're going to look at a couple of videos later. Watchtower has it on their videos. Well, the story goes that Russell made this announcement to the Bethel family at breakfast, signaling the end of the Gentile Times and the beginning of God's kingdom. So this event is frequently referenced as the defining moment in the early Watchtower history, and it's taught as an absolute fact in the Watchtower and JW literature. And my wife and I went to the Canadian Bethel this year, and we seen it there on the wall. And we're going to look at this. Now, the story goes that Russell made this announcement to the Bethel family at breakfast, signaling the end of the Gentile Times and the beginning of God's kingdom. Well, this event is frequently referenced as the defining moment in the early Watchtower history and taught as an absolute fact. So here's some articles to prove that. I'm going to reference this of ExJW so you guys can see all the receipts, all the proof. There's a publication, God's Kingdom Rules 2014, 2023, printing, a publication, Jehovah's Witnesses, page 61, publication, Kingdom Ministry 1995, a yearbook 2014, and a Watchtower 2007. So they're all referencing the same thing. Now, there are significant issues with this story, though. The published details surrounding Russell's supposed declaration raises questions about its accuracy, and the contemporary evidence is completely missing, suggesting it might not have happened at all. So let's carry on. 1914, where did it come from? April 15th, 1917. This is after Russell died, and they're reiterating this right in the Brooklyn, New York newspaper. They're saying the same thing. In the April 15th, 1917 edition of the Watchtower, there is reference to the Gentile Times ending. Remember, Russell died at this point, not around. Rutherford's running the show. However, the quote is not attributed to Russell himself. Instead, the words are presented in a general manner as if from the Watchtower, without clearly linking them to the man who was later said to have spoken them. And there's no mention of an announcement. The words themselves are different from what Russell is supposed to have said. The Watchtower from time to time has set forth proof that the Gentile Times has ended and the monarchs of the earth have had their day. We'll look at this. Well, the Watchtower, here's the Watchtower 1922. This is many years after Russell died. And it's reiterating this on the first day. On the first day? Wait a minute. They were saying on the second day. Well, it says on the first day, Brother Russell walked into the dining room. Wow, they changed it. Well, publication May 1st, what does it say? The first printed version of the breakfast story is not until 1922. This is the first printed version, 8 years after the event, 6 years after Russell died. And in this version, we see the story of him walking into the dining room on the first day of October, not the second day. So finally, the day arrived. This is what's in the article, the first day. And they say the same thing behind it. So this account places the announcement on October 1st, 1914, in contrast to the other date, October 2nd. Well, there's a discrepancy between the original narrative and the later recollection. And you might be thinking, well, what's one day, right? One day. He could have been off. Maybe Rutherford fixed it. I don't even know how you can get to an October date. I could see the year maybe, but the date? I don't know. That's just bizarre. How you can dick with this date. Well, Russell never spoke of any announcement in 1914. Here's what he said. If you can look at this, I'm going to read it right here. Okay, you might have to. I'll see if I can zoom it in for you. This is interesting, and again, you can look at all this stuff. Okay, did we lose it? Lost it. There it is. Well, I'll read it. He says, we did not say positively that this would be the year. This is Russell's words, 1914. It's a Watchtower in November. He says, we merely left everyone to look at the facts of history and reckon for himself. So what was that about? Studying God's word, we have measured the 20 years, he says, the 7 symbolic times from that year of 606 BC. There have been found that it reached down to October 1914 as nearly as we were able to reckon. And we did not say positively that this would be the year. We merely left it everyone to look at the facts of history and reckon for himself. So that's Russell's words. Then there's a publication in Watchtower, July 15th, 1915. That's the Bible says that the Gentile times have ended. Their kings have had their day. So it's reiterating 1915, a little bit of the kings having their day. And then the publication Watchtower, April 15th, 1922. What does it say there? They have known that the lines of the Gentiles expired just 25 years later. Yeah. It gives some dates. August 1st, 1914 is what this one's saying, August 1st. So let's see what Miss Usato said. She says, it's important to note that Russell himself never explicitly claimed that he made the Gentile Times have ended announcement. And if he had, in fact, announced on October 1st or the 2nd, 1914, don't you think he would have published the event in the Watchtower magazine soon after? Like right after, right? It'd be in the next Watchtower. Well, it says above is an article from November 1st, 1914, where rather than state that the Gentile Times have definitely ended, Russell had announced this fact at a breakfast a month before, and it questions whether or not the Gentile Times have ended. So it's more or less, and I read it to you, it's in that small print, it's like Russell saying, it's kind of up to you. What do you think? That's how I got that. So why did it take until 1922 for this to become a big thing? Well, in 1915, Russell gave a lecture, what was published in 1915 Watchtower, the July Watchtower, where he talks about the Gentile Times have ended, but without any reference to a particular day in October or any announcement. That's all, he just talked about it, right? And just 1 month before the breakfast declaration story appears in the Watchtower, that's in 1922, long time later, an article of April 15th edition of the Watchtower says the Gentile Times have ended. So that's when they did the big announcement, 1922, many, many years after Russell died. Yet the end of the Gentile Times was what they were all waiting for, correct? It was one of the most significant events in mankind's history, certainly significant for the organization, right? So why would Watchtower Society wait until 1922 to tell the story of this huge announcement? That's my question. The fact that this took 8 years even to mention Russell's involvement in such an important, momentous announcement raises suspicions that the breakfast declaration might have been made up after Russell's death, even up to 1926. At least there was speculation about the exact date at the end of the Gentile Times. August 1st, he said. September 20th and October 1st have all been named at one time or another. And if the wise and faithful servant had said himself in 1914, why was there any doubt? So October 1st or 2nd in 1914, Watchtower was retelling Russell's story with the date as of October 1st, as seen in the July 15th, 1950 Watchtower. And here's a bunch of publications here, October 1st, October 1st, October 1st, October 1st, all right up to 1974, folks. So 1973, 1967, 1950. And above you'll see the May 1st, 1967 Watchtower does not reference the story, but does state the date of the Gentile Times as ending on October 1st, 1914. And the 1973 book of God's Kingdom of 1,000 Years also has October 1st dated for Russell's story. And in the August 15th, 1974 Watchtower again states the Gentile Times ended on October 1st. 1975, something changed. So the 1975 yearbook retells Russell's story, but now uses the October 2nd date, right here. What happened in 1975 to convince the organization to change the date from October 1st to October 2nd? Well, think about it. There was a time period between 1957 and 1975 where there were two dates for the same event. There was October 1st and October 2nd. What made Watchtower decide to go with the date from the non-Watchtower book? That's that book that guy wrote, McLennan, if I said it right. And to this day, October 2nd, 1914 is officially recognized date for the event and can be seen in any quotes I shared earlier. Isn't it curious that they don't stick with the date given in the original telling of the story, which was much closer to the time when it was supposedly happened and was in a Watchtower publication? Yeah. They change things. Now, if Russell really declared the dates that the Gentile Times have ended on October 1st, why didn't they know the date in subsequent articles? Here it's saying September 20th, right here, it's underlined. Probably, he says, probably marked the end of the Gentile Times. Maybe Rutherford came along and said, let's get rid of probably, it happened October 2nd. That's what the Watchtower did. Okay, November 1st, 1914, Watchtower What's that about? It says the Battle of Armageddon. Should we expect that the Lord would reveal himself at the very moment the Gentile times ended? The Bible declaration, he shall not be revealed in the flaming fire. Bunch of stuff, the way they talked back then, eh? Well, what does it say? A huge clue that Russell never made any such announcement on October 14th can be seen by the Watchtower literature published after the alleged event. If Russell really had made the announcement in October 1914, why just a month after did the November 1st, 1914 Watchtower state that September 20th, 1914 probably marked the end of the Gentile times? We read that. Good question. So here's some Watchtowers, March 15th, 1919. The last half, there's another one. Let's see what Miss Usato says. Above is a letter in March 15, 1919 Watchtower. It has the reader speculating about the Gentile times ending in October 1st. August 1st. Now they went from October to August 1st. It was August 22nd there for a while. Next is a Watchtower article of December 1st, 1919, stating that the Gentile times ended in August of 1914. And then there is an April 15th one stating that the Gentile times ended August 1st, 1914, a year later. A 1923 Watchtower shown below a year later. So this is August 1st, world conditions. Marked the end of the Gentile times. Spot the difference? Well, there's the picture of Russell. The supposed picture, okay. This is a movie. The first clip from the video in JW.org titled Jehovah's Witnesses, Faith in Action, Part 1, Out of Darkness from 2010. And the next clip is a video from the Warwick Museum Tours, A People for Jehovah's Name from 2019. And notice the line added in the second video. So we're going to look at the first video. Let's see what it looks like.
At Brooklyn Bethel on October 2nd, 1914, Charles Russell made a monumental announcement.
The Gentile times have ended.
I'm going to rerun
this. At Brooklyn Bethel on October 2nd, 1914, Charles Russell made a monumental announcement.
The Gentile times have ended. Their kings have had their day.
October 2nd.
The Gentile times have ended. Their kings have had their day. So we know not what awaits us.
So that was a good act. JW.org, they have good actors, and they like to act all this stuff out. So yeah, that's a video titled Jehovah's Witnesses, Faith in Action, and shows October 2nd, eh? So notice this here, we're going to look at this publication, God's Kingdom Rules. It states that Russell announces the Bethel family that the Gentile times have ended. Their kings have had their day, according to a sister in attendance, he added, so we know now what awaits us. And this is a picture at the Canadian Bethel, featuring a newspaper clippings from Russell's writings. When we went in there, it was really dark. It wasn't light like this. So I don't know. They probably knew I was an apostate, and they just darkened the room up. You almost had to have a flashlight. I took a video, but it didn't turn out that good. The lessons taught to generations of witnesses. And by the way, I have a video on that. It's last year. During the summer convention, we flew out to Toronto, my wife and I. And we booked an impromptu trip, Bethel tour. We actually put it as our email, ExJW TV. Mail at ExJW TV. That was the email we used. We told them right up front by that email address that we're apostates. Vern Hoole, I'm registered in Canada. But anyways, we went to the gate. They denied us entrance, said you have to have an appointment. So we went back to the hotel, made an appointment online, and booked it for the next morning. And we got in. We did the Bethel tour. So we have a video on that if you search on my channel. Now, the lessons taught to the generations of witnesses, what pivotal moment in their history then? Well, as momentous as Russell's announcement was at this breakfast in October 1914, I'm going to blow that up a bit, and then we can see it all together a little better. So it didn't even make it to the 1914 annual report. That's a good question. Or that's a very good statement, Miss Usato. It didn't even make it to the annual report. So we know that this is fabricated. Let's just read on. So did Russell really make the famous and momentous October 1st or 2nd, 1914 announcement? Well, the evidence suggests that this story, as it has been taught to generations of Jehovah's Witnesses, is at least an exaggeration. It's at least an exaggeration, if not an outright fabrication. Well, Macmillan's 1957 recollection and later Watchtower publications attribute the statement to Russell. There is no concrete contemporaneous evidence that Russell himself made any declaration on that particular day. Moreover, the fact that the statement as attributed to Russell did not appear in the Watchtower until years after Russell's death, and this raises further doubts about its authenticity. And there is no mention of the event in any letters to the Watchtower any time, or mention it on the annual report. And the introduction of Russell's Gentile Times announcements, it fits conveniently with Russell's agenda in 1920, or Rutherford's agenda. Remember we talked about Rutherford, the lawyer? Well, he had an agenda and he litigated this. He was clever, and he's the one that's behind a lot of this, I think. Russell started it, of course, and Rutherford thought it was a good gig, so he got in and usurped rulership after Russell's death. So the introduction of Russell's Gentile Times announcement, it's convenient. It fits Rutherford's agenda of 1922. And the Watchtower article introducing the antidote for the first time would have been written by Rutherford himself. Thanks for that, Miss Usato. That's what I thought at the beginning. It is known that Rutherford wrote the leader articles at the time. 1922 was a time of significant transition within the Watchtower Society, and after Russell's death in 1962, Joseph Rutherford took over as president, and he was deeply involved in shaping the direction of the organization. And during this period, there was a clear effort to solidify the Watchtower Society's identity and its claim to divine authority. Attributing 1914 declaration to Russell may have been part of this process, an attempt to reinforce the organization's teachings about 1914 and to bluster the idea that the society was the true representative of God's kingdom on earth. And during this time, Rutherford was actively consolidating his leadership and promoting the 1914 teaching as the cornerstone of the movement's prophetic identity. And the Cedar Point Convention in 1922, for example, marked a significant push to reframe the kingdom message and encourage aggressive public preaching. And by promoting the story of Russell's declaration in 1914, Russell sought to strengthen the narrative that Russell had recognized 1914's significance at the time, aligning with the Watchtower's growing emphasis on prophetic fulfillment and divine guidance, reinforcing Rutherford's leadership and the movement's renewed sense of purpose. It would have helped his whole advertising campaign. Remember, it's advertise, the king and his kingdom. This was a real good script for Rutherford to go with. He wrote the most books out of any president. He wrote more books than Russell. Now, it is interesting to note that if you look up Gentile Times in the book Insight from the Scriptures, you are redirected to the appointed times of the nations. Do you find Russell's story there? No. Well, such a defining moment of the Watchtower history is not there, if Russell's story is not there. So this is the end of Larchwood's article. Thank you very much, Larchwood. I want to thank Larchwood for this in-depth research into the history of our former religion. It is crucial and fundamentally important that anyone considering baptism in such a highly controlling religion, one that prides itself on pivotal dates in its doctrines, understands all the facts, including what was said and omitted. Now, if you'd like to dive deeper into the Watchtower teaching, secrets of Russell Rutherford, and how this organization came to be, the Watchtower History channel also goes more in depth. And I just pulled that up. We'll see what comes up. Now, it uses historical documents and the region's own publications as well. And below is a timeline created by Larchwood that highlights the controversial dates relating to the infamous breakfast party. We'll take a quick look at this. This is the Watchtower History channel. These are the two, I don't know if they're brothers or not, but they really know a lot about the Watchtower. They've been affiliated with the Watchtower. They have 221 videos, and these guys are history buffs. So you can take a look at their channel. Now, there's a timeline here Larchwood put in. I thought this was brilliant. November 1st, 1914, they say September was it. Then in 1915, they don't give any dates. You know, this is when Russell was just talking. You know, we read the article. He said probably. He wasn't sure. It wasn't mentioned the next month in the Watchtower or anything. 1915, nothing. Gives no specific dates. Russell discusses it. But then in October 31st, Russell dies. So that's the end of Russell. Then 1917, the Watchtower mentions it, that they have ended, but attributes the thought to the Watchtower itself, not Russell personally. And then in 1919, the Watchtower reader speculates the time ended August 1st. And then in 1919, the Watchtower states August 1st. And then 1922, another Watchtower states August 1st. So now they got dates nailed. And then 1922, so April 15th, 1922, they said August 1st. Then May, the next month, April, May, they said October 1st. They went from August 1st to October 1st. And then in 1922, it gives the date August 1st. Then 1923, August 1st, so they stuck with that for a year or two. Then in 1950, they say October 1st. Wow, now they went to October 1st, 1950. It's a lot of years later from Russell. 1957, this Macmillan writes a book, and he says, no, it's October 2nd. So Watchtower states the nations in May 1st, 67. They still say it's October 1st. But then in 1973, they're still saying it's October 1st. All the way to 1974, October 1st. But then in 1975, they must have read Macmillan's book. Then they said October 2nd. And they stuck with that date, right now, 1993, 2014 to 2023, and we watched the video. So that's the date. That's how they got to the date. There's nothing there. Like, I don't know how they play with these dates, folks, but this is an organization that plays with dates, and they have a lot of, I don't know, fun doing it. Why do they do it? Why do they fabricate? Well, you'd have to get into the mind of Rutherford, and he was a narcissist, and they say to try to get into a narcissist's mind, you cannot, unless you maybe are a narcissist. I don't know. But anyways, that's the end of the story. Thanks again, Miss Usato and Larchwood, for bringing this to us. And we're going to roll out the video. And we're going to say thanks again. Keep living your day with love. Keep treating people kindly. And don't reiterate the Watchtower's dates. They're not true. It's all fabricated. Well, thanks again, and drop your comments, drop a line, say hello, help push the video, share it, all the usual stuff. We'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.